They are all here to take your questions on 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850, and of course you can watch us on Global Player and the LBC app.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the Health Secretary has called Nigel Farage a snake oil salesman after the Reform UK leader told LBC he had no idea whether Donald Trump was right to link taking paracetamol with autism. West Streetings called his comments dangerous and irresponsible. There's been cross-party condemnation of Mr Farage. Scotland's First Minister John Swinney says Mr Farage has been reckless.
All my clinical advisors indicate to me that paracetamol is a safe drug to take. I think political leaders should accept clinical opinion and clinical advice. They are the experts and should support that and not play the type of games that Nigel Farage is playing this morning.
Volodymyr Zelensky has told world leaders they have to stop Russia now or pay later. Addressing the UN General Assembly, the Ukrainian president says if there's no intervention, Vladimir Putin will expand the war. 2 people have been killed and 4 injured after a shooting at an immigration facility in Texas. It reportedly happened in Dallas as the victims were being led into a building to be processed and deported. And UK scientists say they believe they've found a way to slow the progress of Huntington's disease. It involves a new gene therapy delivered by brain surgery. In the city, the FTSE 100s closed up 27 points at 92.50. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.14. LBC weather, a clear and dry evening for most. Some patchy fog developing later. Lows of 8 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello and welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question. I'm Iain Dale. On the panel with me, to my left, we have Ella Whelan, journalist and author who organises the Battle of Ideas Festival. To her left, Barry Gardiner, Labour MP for Brent West. And to my right, Stella Tsantekidou, who is a political commentator and former Labour advisor. And next to her, the chairman of the Henry Jackson Society and former Conservative Cabinet Minister, Sir Brandon Lewis. They're here to take your calls on 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850 and you can watch us on Global Player and the LBC app.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Let's go to our first caller. It's James in Gravesend. Hello, James.
Hello, Iain. Nice to hear you again.
And you, what would you like to say?
Question tonight. Right, first of all, I know that you have Barry Gardiner on there. Good evening, Barry. Good evening, members of the panel. And so the question is, how can Labour, or perhaps I should rephrase that and say the Prime Minister's chief spin doctor described a £700,000 donation as an administrative error?
Well, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, is being defended by Cabinet Ministers despite it being revealed that he failed to disclose more than £700,000 of donations to the Labour Together think tank, which he ran from 2017 until 2020. Coincidentally, the time that Keir Starmer was planning his leadership campaign. I'm sure that was a complete and utter coincidence. Brandon, let's come to you first on this, because you've been chairman of the Conservative Party. You have had to defend donations to the party on occasion. How serious is this? I mean, can you really describe a £700,000 non-declaration as an administrative error?
No. I find it quite astonishing. I don't know the full details of Morgan's answer for why it wasn't properly declared, but having been chairman of the Conservative Party, the due diligence you have to go through, the processes you have to go through to ensure that, and in particular donations of that kind of level. I mean, I was chairman, we had a few donors who are 7-figure donors, but it's not something that happens every day. So, you know, there's a whole process with the Electoral Commission, make sure things are properly registered. You can't make mistakes on things like that. It's just too big a deal. And you end up, losing days of government time answering questions on something when you should be focused on the country and the issues of the country. So certainly in government, when I was chairman, that is not something that I could comprehend how you can make an error. I'm not going to say, from time to time, local associations, different organisations for small donations may not quite, but £700,000 is not a small donation. There is a process you have to go through to do these things correctly.
I think there was a leak that said he was advised to say it was an administrative error by his lawyer. So
I saw somebody tweeted the email or the letter from the lawyer, which was interesting.
Who also coincidentally has been promoted to the House of Lords. Again, very coincidental, Barry Gardiner.
Well, coincidence or not. Look, I'm not a member of Labour Together. I always thought the name was rather ironic. But I...
In what way?
In the same way that most organisations that state on the tin that they do something don't actually do it. Labour Together is not about binding Labour together. It's about one particular strand of Labour. But I thought my allusion to irony might have said that without my having to
just in case
elaborate.
a listener hadn't quite got it. That's all I wanted to.
Okay. Look. My understanding was that the £740,000 was not one donation, but a series of donations that accumulated to that amount. Clearly, according to what they said to the Electoral Commission a number of years ago, they did not have the systems in place that they should have had in order to have those registered with the Electoral Commission. Now, they have accepted that and they paid a very hefty fine as a result of it. The question, I think, has come up again now. It's been in the public domain for a number of years, but I think the reason it's come up again is because there is this letter from Shamash, the lawyer, at the time. But he did actually say, my advice to you is that, and it is as we are doing, that you must be transparent. And that is simply to say that it was an administrative error. They should have got it right. Now, if somebody's saying, well, actually there was another reason, then they have to say, well, what was that other reason? It's not usually in an organisation's to their benefit to say, we haven't got any money. If people are donating money, then that's usually a way of saying, good, lots of people are supporting them. So it's then incumbent on people to say, well, if this is genuinely dodgy, what was it dodgy about?
Ella Whelan.
I think, the thing about this is that I don't care so much about the £740,000, or I'm not shocked by your inferences of this being a coincidence or not. I think the thing that really grates is that Labour, and particularly Keir Starmer, sold himself and the party as the squeaky clean, do things properly, almost boring managerialism kind of mummy in charge after the corruption of the Tories and the wallpaper and blah blah.
But to be
blah.
fair, this was 2020. This is not recent.
No, I know, but the fact is, they've never been like that. And I'm not trying to make a point of saying, oh, parties like this, there's always some kind of low level, whether you want to call it corruption or not. There's sort of shenanigans going on, whatever. These things matter, but the thing I think that most people find annoying is Labour's hypocrisy, rather than the fact that there was an administrative error, or whether they were sort of moving things around to help a leadership bid. Because if things pile on top of each other. There's this, okay, it was in the past, but it's come to light now. There's the sort of the Angie issue of the taxes. There's it's not so long ago that we were all talking about Lord Alley and the glasses. There's loads and loads of stuff like this that, okay, all parties do it to some extent. And certainly all people like Morgan McSweeney is not the first spin doctor to try and spin some things. But the fact is, Labour has always been really high and mighty and snooty and finger-pointy about morals and ethics. And so they can do one. They're just like everybody else.
Stella, what would you like to say?
I just don't care. I think we have so many bigger problems. It is from 2020. Of course, people are trying to get rid of Morgan McSweeney, and that's fair enough. I'm not a fly on the wall in number 10. I cannot tell you to what extent all of the faults that have been pinned on Morgan McSweeney are in fact his own making. I know that in the media he has been portrayed as this all-powerful figure, but it is very hard to tell how much of that is spin from people who want to get rid of him and how much is actually him being a bit...
Why do people want to get rid of him? I mean, he was the architect of Labour's election victory.
And you could say that a lot of people are very dissatisfied with how the last year has gone and how many people from close to Keir Starmer are now no longer close to him. It's just Morgan McSweeney who has been left at the helm. And so a lot of people think that he has done a very bad job. And that's fine. I do not know whether they are right or wrong. The point is that what is the purpose of this scandal from 2020, which, as Barry said, the fine has been paid, apologies have been made, it has been explained over and over again. What is the point of this coming to the surface once again? What is the public value that it adds to the debate, and how is this helping us with any of our problems as a country?
Stella, there is sorry, Barry.
Okay.
There is a wider issue here. I think this does, and Ella, I think, highlighted it superbly well in going back. There's two sides to this that I think matter. One is the hypocrisy point. I think all politicians are continually getting this problem of, we criticise somebody for doing something, then our party go and do something as bad, if not worse. And for this government coming in when the public wanted something different, Keir Starmer was exactly portraying to do that. And then we've had this consistent run of things from the glasses, the football matches, all the way through that. Angelo, people he's backed and then sacked the next day. And it gives an underlying message, apart from the hypocrisy point of this government is not capable of managing. It's not capable of doing things correctly. It's continually making very simple, cardinal political errors when it should be focused on getting things done for the country, and it's just not doing it.
I think it's hypocrisy on your part to suggest that the scandals about Keir Starmer's glasses have any comparison with the scandals that we saw under the Conservatives for the last 14 years. And this is the problem I have with people internally from the Labour Party trying to take down Morgan McSweeney in this way. Because at the moment, we are giving Conservatives and right-wingers from other parties the space to suggest that the Labour Party is the same as the Conservatives, or it's the same as Reform, or as any other party, and that's simply not the case.
Well, they've demonstrated it over the last 14 months. The scandals, the resignations that have happened, you can compare them to what happened under the Conservatives.
Peter Mandelson, that's the only scandal where I will accept, yes, on that one we were as bad as it
Louise Haigh?
No. I think that where where the two parties are the same is that it's a mistake to think that the country wanted a manager to come in and clean away all the dirtiness of the last 14 years. That's not what the country wanted. Most people wanted some kind of big ideas in politics. And the Labour Party has not, particularly Keir Starmer, has got no big ideas. We still are asking now, and however long it's been since he was elected, what does this man stand for? There's constant kind of toing and froing on any policy. Anytime there's any pushback, they retreat. We don't know what their big ideas are other than their sort of semi-Blairite. And so the focus is internal, because that's all there is to talk about in this extremely boring party that cannot seem to do anything right. So don't blame us for being interested in the internals. It's all you're giving us. It's all you're giving us to talk about.
Well, speaking as somebody who was formerly voted as the most boring man in Parliament, let me answer that.
Never. Otherwise we wouldn't have you back so often.
Look, I want to pick up what Stella was saying, because we can talk about, are we boring, are we administrative, are we hypocritical? And, I take some of the charges that you make. There have been a series of wrong steps and people who've done the wrong thing been forced to resign, okay? And that has really damaged the party. I don't think that's institutional, but it's individual failings that come one upon the other, and people are fed up with it. And the people who are fed up with it are fed up inside the party just as much as outside. But then you say, well, the government should be focused on delivering and getting on with doing things. Hey, we said that we'd actually reduce the waiting list by 2 million. The figures are now 5 million reduction. We've put in place the nursery places for kids.
Hang on waiting lists, when you came in, they were 7.5 million. And they're now down to 7.25 million. So you've 250,000 people. Well, multiply that over a 4 or 5 year parliament. They're still going to be sort of like 5.5, 6 million at this rate.
My understanding was that we've actually we've increased the number of places, and we've got those, we've delivered that, so that we've delivered not 2 but 5 million. Now,
well, that's not my understanding.
Okay, fine. Well, look, Iain, if you're right, I will always
maybe
I will
we're
always
both
check the figures and apologise.
I think I'm talking about waiting lists. I'm not talking about the sort of
the actual. Well, no doubt we're comparing apples and pears, but there we are. But we have got on with that. We have got on with actually trying to clear the backlog that was in the courts, which was blocking the hotels that the Tories created, that was actually completely gridlocking the asylum system. So there are things that we've been doing, and they are, in one sense, they're administrative, grinding, detailed things. But actually, if you ask a mum now about having a nursery place for their kid and having that paid for, and I know how you'll come back.
Shall we ask a mum now? Shall we ask a mum?
I know that you've done the nursery thing.
Exactly.
That's lovely. That's great. It hasn't had an effect.
If you can get
one. But also, my kids go to nursery in a Hackney Council-run nursery. Okay, I know the councils decide things. Hackney Council, solidly Labour MP. The fees have gone up by hundreds and hundreds of pounds this year for a nursery placement. My kid is now close to £300 a week for a nursery placement for 3 days.
£300 a week?
Yes, for a nursery placement for 3 days. That's Hackney Council, solidly Labour MP. And I tell you, I have chewed the ear off of so many council members, MPs, whoever I can get them. No one wants to talk about it. So you say you deliver this stuff, and that's fine. I'm on board with the plans for extension of childcare. I want more of it. But in practice, this doesn't change people's lives. So it's just, that's what I mean by this just being like, you use the term administrative grinding detail. That doesn't cut it. That doesn't change people's lives. We want some big picture thinking with some actual results.
I think if you're a mum sending your kid to school in the morning, knowing that they're going to get a decent breakfast when they're there, that's the sort of thing.
Don't talk to me about toothbrushing, Barry, please.
I'm not talking to you about toothbrushing. I'm talking about having the school breakfast.
I've just done the mental arithmetic there, and I thought, no, that can't be right. So I've just done it on my phone. £15,600 a year you're paying for childcare. No,
it's because I was part-time. My kid is in nursery. I've just had to pay it. So it's my youngest, who's 11 months, is in for 3 days a week. And I'm pretty sure it's 240 or something like that. And then my son is he's older, so it's younger. So it's cheaper. It comes out at about £300 a week for the 2 kids.
For the 2 of them.
How an ordinary family on an average wage can afford that, I do not know. Why we need to go to a break, Barry, and we'll move on to other subjects in just a moment. It's 17 minutes past 8.
This is LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
If you've just tuned in and you're wondering who are these people on Cross Question today, it's Sir Brandon Lewis, chairman of the Henry Jackson Society, former cabinet minister, Stella Tsantekidou, who is a political commentator and former Labour advisor, Ella Whelan, journalist and author. She's the organiser of the Battle of Ideas Festival. When does that take place?
On the 18th and 19th of October.
Oh, so very, very soon. And Barry Gardiner, Labour MP for Brent West. Right, let's go to another caller. It's Nicholas, who's a first-time caller from Epsom. Hello, Nicholas.
Good evening, Ian. How are you?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
So I've got a question here, which is in two parts. So recently, Farage's comments have kind of like a little bit shocked me personally. One is about the indefinite remain part, and his comments about about the autism and the paracetamol. Yeah. And so, what does the panel think of how could it affect, kicking out or deporting people who have legally came here, and or the taxes and everything?
Okay, Ella.
Farage is wrong on all points here. I mean, there's a real human cost to the sort of suggestion that there'd be a blanket removal of indefinite leave to remain. Makes no distinction between people who have, laid down real roots here, ticked all the boxes that you want to tick for what it takes to be a good British citizen or want to be one, and someone who's turned up in the last few years and has no intention of meeting any of those tick boxes. And it's also, I think, a complete misreading of public sentiment. If you think back to the Windrush scandal, which was, a really appalling series of errors by the Home Office, deliberate in some cases, of which stripped British citizens of their right to be here, deported, I think it was 80 people. There was massive public outcry about that. And most importantly, there was, if you looked at the sort of stats for public sentiment, there was, among the over 65s, those people who will get lumped in as a sort of Brexit bloc, they were some of the most outraged. So there is no public desire for this. I think it's Reform and Farage trying to go hard on immigration and just completely misunderstanding the nuances of the discussion around that. So that one's wrong. And don't even get me started on the paracetamol. I mean, obviously, he just doesn't want to tick off Donald Trump. And that's clearly what's just happening here. But the interesting thing about the paracetamol thing is that there is so much quackery around pregnancy and women, and we are no better than America, by the way. There is so much nonsense, junk science around what pregnant women should and shouldn't do. Laws on how much alcohol we can drink. When you go in to have your midwife appointment, you get a list as long as your arm of stuff you can and can't do that has no basis of science, no kind of backing of rigorous scientific fact. So Farage is wrong. But I'd also like to get my hands on a lot of people in the NHS who are just as stupid as he is on some of the, advice that's given to pregnant women. So, if anything, maybe it could open up an interesting discussion about the kind of panicky nature, the panicky sort of what am I looking for? Just the rubbish that surrounds the conversation about pregnant women.
Stella.
I agree, and especially, I don't agree that we are as bad in the UK in terms of the quack advice that we give to pregnant women and in terms of healthcare. I do think we are actually better here. I think that in the US there is a big anti-vax movement. There is a lot of skepticism towards the medical establishment, and for sure, I would never say there aren't times where the medical establishment has not disappointed the public, let's say, in some things. But that doesn't mean that science is wrong and that we shouldn't trust our doctors first and foremost. And what really worries me with what Nigel Farage is doing is that he's an exceptional communicator. You see him when he's talking in interviews, and he's so relaxed. He comes across as such a genuine, thoughtful human being. He has this wonderful, clear English accent of his. And people listen to him and think, oh, he's just being honest when he is not refuting what Donald Trump is saying. But really, what he's doing is he's a person with immense influence. And by allowing this rumor, this half-truth, to spread out there, he's actually creating a very dangerous environment where next time we have a massive crisis like the pandemic, we are going to really struggle to communicate with the wider public and give them information and give them advice that they will all have to follow. And yes, the medical advice may not always be 100% perfect, but it is so important for our public health that we follow it.
Barry, would you want to address the immigration point that Nicholas was raising?
Sure. Look, all of this, both these issues, Nicholas, are about grabbing a headline. And he's very good at that, as Stella says. He's a very good communicator. But it's grabbing a headline and stirring people up in a particular way. We know what he's been saying about immigration for many, many years. And we need to actually just look at the detail. What would this mean to the NHS to take out everyone who is legally here on indefinite leave to remain? It would mean about 100,000 people working in our NHS were deported. Now, the practicalities of deporting that many people in the first place, you have to say, what is the cost involved in that? What is the time frame it's going to take? How are you physically going to do it? Are you going to wrench apart families because husbands and wives, one will be British, one will still be on ILR, because there are marriages across borders. So we have all the sort of practical objections, but these are the things that they are boring detail, and it's actually then you're fighting against a broad brush canvas that says, we're just going to deport everybody who's here, whether they're illegal or legal. And the week before, it was 600,000 people, illegals, we're going to deport. This week, it's 800,000 people who are here legally that we're going to deport. So we're talking about deporting 1.4 million people here, or unless he believes that some of them are the same. And yet there's no practical steps or indication of how he's going to go about it and what it's going to cost. And we simply
it's not going to cost anything. We're going to get £234 billion benefit from it. That's what he says.
Yes, but all those people who are working in our economy legally as people with indefinite leave to remain are not going to be paying taxes anymore. So he's calculated one side, and you're right, and I know you're saying it ironically, but he calculates one side and presents it as if it's a gift to the exchequer without ever calculating what the downside is. I think we just need to call Nigel Farage and the Reform Party out for what they are. They are snake oil salesmen. That's exactly what they are. And they are trying to replicate the sort of right-wing agenda that went on in the MAGA movement in the United States, here in the UK. And I think we've just got to combat it with reason and rational argument.
Brandon.
Look, on the paracetamol point, I've got a young daughter, and one of the things that I have found more and more concerning over the years, she's in her early 20s now, but through her teenage years, and even now, is the things that are spread around very quickly on social media that are complete falsehoods, particularly around women's health and issues around that spread very, very quickly. And I agree with what others have said. I think Nigel Farage making comments like that today just adds to that. It almost gives it credibility in a way that for something like paracetamol that's been long proven and both scientifically and evidentially over the years to be perfectly safe and quite proper when given advice to take it, I think it was a dangerous and a silly thing to do. And I think when you add that to his comments around immigration and removing people at the moment, I've, as you might remember, I was an immigration minister. I'm still very proud of the fact that I brought in the European settlement scheme that gave citizenship to more people than we've done in modern lifetime, and it worked. And people who are here legally and contribute to society, I think, have a right to be here. They contribute to our society as basic. They're important. That's quite different to people who shouldn't be coming here or shouldn't be here legally and dealing with them illegally. By talking the way Farage has in the last couple of days, he's blurring that line between the two. And that's what I'm all in favour of. I think there's much more we can and should do.
That's intentional as well, isn't it? He's doing it absolutely intentional.
And I'll come back to that point. There is much more we can and should, my government should have, certainly in the last few years, and this government should be doing and can be doing to deal with illegal immigration, both retrospectively and going forward. But to try and blur the line between people, it just creates society division that's unhelpful. And I just wonder, and I do think Nigel is arguably the best communicator currently in elected politics. And I remember in 2014, during the European elections, he made a comment. He was riding high with UKIP at the time. They won those European elections. But about a week or two before polling day, there was an incident where he was on the radio. I think it was on the radio. It might have even been on LBC. And he was talking about people's voices and accents he'd heard on the train during the day, and some people's neighbours, and being quite dismissive of their ethnicity and things. And it just didn't ring with the public. And I can remember I was on doorsteps at the time, knocking on doors. There was a definite shift in mood. And it shifted from that point on. And he stepped over a line that the British public thought was correct and appropriate and acceptable. And I just wonder whether it's this or this is leading to something where he will do that again. And it'll be interesting to see how the public react to this kind of language as he goes forward.
Mark in Kilburn says, do you think it's becoming clear as events have unfolded that Nigel Farage is not fit to become Prime Minister? I mean, the eating the swans thing today, I mean, that was just bizarre, wasn't it?
And the reason why it was, what really makes me sad really about the acceptance of Nigel Farage's comments is that he wants us to be scared. And I'm talking as an immigrant myself, who this week I've been in the UK 13 years. I never applied for a British citizenship because I didn't need one and it's very costly. But this week I thought, oh no, I need to do that now. I really cannot risk this.
But there will be other people in your situation who started thinking, OK, I've got 3 years to plan what I'm going to do, because it does look as if it's a possibility that he could become Prime Minister. And that, I mean, I remember all the debates about European citizens' rights back in the Brexit days. This is going to be that writ large, isn't it?
Yes, and you will have a lot of people who you will need them to stay here and they will go. But you mentioned the comments he made about the swans. The problem with those comments is that there are 2 or 3 videos that are circulating online, which one shows a woman with a goose, another one shows 2 men trying to steal a swan, and another one shows an officer who looks like he's from RSPCA, what's the charity, I can't remember, who have denied that they are sending people to look for migrants stealing swans, but she's going around looking for...
Well, they're vicious beasts. I mean, I wouldn't want to steal a swan or a goose coming out of it.
But the point is, right, like so many of these conspiracy theories, there could be a migrant out there. There could be a bunch of migrants out there who have stolen one swan or 2 swans and eaten them.
Or eaten the dogs or the cats.
I was going to say, it's exactly, they're playing the same play.
But the point is that now we have, all immigrants now are being seen as swan eaters, as
dog and cat eaters,
as animals, basically.
Well, you've all said that Nigel Farage is a good communicator, and I wouldn't dispute that, but I don't think that he says jump and the British public says how high. So I wouldn't accept that people then suddenly have a negative view of immigrants along the swan line. I think probably people are smarter than that. But I think you also have to...
What's your favourite delicacy, Stella?
Snails.
You also have to ask... the question is he fit to become Prime Minister? I mean, he's got the lot of you shaking in your boots, and not for no reason. And the reason is actually because reform is bigger than Nigel Farage. It is something to do with a sort of resurgence of... It's a kind of the Brexit moment come again, where working class people, it's predominantly working class people across the country, are interested in a party which is talking in broad brush, big picture. And that's not to deny the detail. And also, Reform are very inadequate in lots of ways. They've had their own scandals. They've been stupid about organisation.
They've had their own one-in, one-out policy.
All the rest of it. But what they have, that Labour and the Conservatives and nobody else has, is the ear of the British working class public at the moment, and significant section of the middle class. And the reason why that's important is because whether Farage is a good communicator or not, there are bigger things at stake here, and he's got the answer to the existential questions that the country has about immigration, about the economy, all the rest of it, about net zero, all these big issues that none of you lot want to touch.
But he doesn't
stop
have those
sneering
answers.
at him, because what you're doing is you're sneering at the British public. They're sick of it.
Absolutely not. We're not sneering at the British.
You are. You said rational. Be rational. That's like saying everybody who cares about immigration thing is not rational.
No, I didn't say that, actually. I said you have to combat that big brush without the detail with rational argument, is what I actually said. But
I think it's really important that we take what the public concerns are that he is expanding upon very seriously. I do GB News every week. I go on that programme.
If we'd known that, we wouldn't have invited you on, Barry, honestly.
I do that every week.
So do you, don't you?
Because I think it's really important to try and counter and put the other view. But I think it's also important to listen to those concerns. But what it's not legitimate to do is then for, as I believe Reform does and he does, is then to turn them into scaremongering and to amplify hatred and division in this country on the back of it.
Right, we do need to move on because we're very late for the news. It's 8:34, news time with Daryl Jackson.
Pressures building on Nigel Farage to row back on his comments about paracetamol on LBC. The Reform UK leaders told us he has no idea if Donald Trump's discredited claims about a link with autism is true. The Health Secretary says the remarks are anti-science and accused Nigel Farage of having no backbone. Volodymyr Zelensky's told world leaders they need to stop Russia now or face aggression in the future. Ukraine's presidents warned the UN General Assembly that Vladimir Putin's planning to expand the conflict. A family of 3 have arrived in Britain as part of the government's one-in, one-out scheme with France. They're the first asylum seekers exchanged in the deal. LBC weather, a clear and dry evening for most. Some patchy fog in the north and west later, lows of 8 degrees.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
With Ed Davey warning voters not to let Trump's America become Farage's Britain, we're asking whether Donald Trump has become the dividing line, not in America, but in British politics. Listen now on our free Global Player app.
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Jamie has sent this text in. Barry Gardiner's very busy. Newsnight last night, Politics Live and LBC today, blaming the Tories for everything each time. He never disappoints.
Well, I'm glad, Jamie, that you've been listening to my pearls of wisdom so assiduously. I'm very grateful to you. An IC Global mug will be coming your way soon, I've no doubt.
Certainly not. Ella Whelan is here, journalist and author, organises the Battle of Ideas Festival. Stella Tsantekidou is a political commentator and former Labour advisor. And Brandon Lewis, chairman of the Henry Jackson Society, former cabinet minister. John is in Hammersmith. John, what would you like to ask?
Evening. If I could turn our attention outwards for a moment, Mr. Trump posted that Ukraine was in a position, or is now in a position, to win back the territory it's lost. Mr. Zelensky followed up with Russia's planning to expand the war. What exactly did Mr. Trump mean by is in a position to win back the territory? And what is the panel's sense of what's going to happen in the next 12 months? And Iain, if you'd weigh in on this too, please.
Oh, okay. Depends what the others say. Stella, let's start with you.
Who knows with Donald Trump what he means? I was really glad to see Boris Johnson on Harry Cole's show today telling off Nigel Farage, because she says that he is a risk to our national security and he's very worried about some of his positions on Russia. And that is precisely the problem with having someone who is just so willing to bow down to Donald Trump. Who knows what Donald Trump means? One moment he hates Ukraine, Ukraine. The next one, he says something like this. I have no idea. Nigel Farage was saying on LBC today the usual line about Donald Trump. We need to take him seriously, but not literally, which is a very comforting line, but really it doesn't mean anything, because it doesn't give us a way to plan our future defense plans and our foreign affairs when it comes to our sovereignty, to our European sovereignty and our security, and how we are dealing with someone like Vladimir Putin. So I'm sorry, I can't be of any help.
Brandon, help us out. I mean, isn't it this simple, that if Trump means what he says there, that Zelensky can win back all the territory? Yes, he can, but only if Trump provides the arms for him to do so.
Look, I don't know what Trump was referring to, whether Trump was, because he does speak extemporaneously. He could have seen intelligence or things from his own teams that he's just decided to say. So you just don't know with Trump. But look, it is true that the reality with Ukraine is it needs that US support. Europe needs US support for arms to give Ukraine the support it needs to make sure that it is successful. And we are defending a democracy there. This is part of the continent of Europe, if you like, if not the European Union itself. And it's certainly something that we should all in the West be keen to ensure that Putin does not succeed with that illegal and abhorrent invasion.
But do you think the scales have dropped from Trump's eyes on Putin, that he now realises that Putin has been playing him along?
Well, look, I mean, it was clear before he came into office, before the inauguration, that Trump and his team believed that they could get a quick deal on Ukraine. I think they genuinely believe that, and I suspect that they have obviously been found out that that's not the case. They're hopefully realising that Putin is prepared to play the long game and thinks he can play a long game. And in reality, Ukraine needs the support of its European allies, so in Europe and the West, with the US being the key partner in that. The reality is the US arms supply and US support for Ukraine has been so far absolutely key to this, and it will be key in any resolution, whether it's a negotiated resolution, or whether it is ensuring that Ukraine has the arms it needs to force Putin to come to the table properly, or to outright get that territory back. It does need US support, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realise that. Trump tends to look at things, when you look at his track record, both in the first term when we were dealing with him as the UK and even in this term, he looks at things not like a politician. He still looks at things as a businessman and how he can create leverage and get a deal over the line. So something in this, and I don't know what, to him will be some form of way of creating leverage to put pressure on somebody in some way. I can't quite work out how this statement particularly does that, but if it means he's going to give the support to Ukraine that they need to get the right outcome eventually and peace in Ukraine, then that will be a good thing. But nobody knows what that's going to be or how he's going to act or what he does tomorrow. But hopefully he will do something and continue to give the support that Ukraine and Europe need to see an end to this war in the way that is right.
Ella Whelan.
I think that Trump is just fickle, and whether or not you take him seriously, the most dangerous thing about him is when it comes to foreign affairs, because the way in which he runs his mouth on social media or in these press conferences, it does seem to be, well, fickle is a nice word to use for it. I mean, the thing that's really strong about here in our government and previous governments, whether it's Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer, have always been very good on highlighting what's at stake with Ukraine, and that's the issue of sovereignty, and using the S word and forefronting that in all discussions about it. Trump's handling of Ukraine has been much more, and to a certain extent, the wider US context of how to deal with Ukraine has been less to do with that big concept of sovereignty and more to do with what does it mean for the US domestically, what does it mean for Trump personally, as Brandon was saying about the wanting to be proud of getting this deal. So it will take US support, but I think if the UK is not a small voice, and if we continue to be very strong and very hard on how important defending democracy and sovereignty is, even if we're not very good at it ourselves in our own house, but when it comes to Ukraine, we've been very good and been very clear at that, then, maybe that might help, but Trump is fickle.
Barry.
John, there's no realistic military assessment of the situation that thinks that all the losses that Ukraine has sustained since 2014 are going to be recouped in short order. And by short order, I mean within the next 5 to 10 years. Not militarily. That simply is not on the cards. And therefore you've got to say, well, why is Trump doing this? My own view is that it is his transactional basis. It's his old deal-making guy coming out. And it's what he thinks is best for the United States. And what is best for the United States is to see a weakened Russia. And that's why he knows that the longer the war goes on, the more degraded the Russian military becomes and the more degraded the Russian economy becomes. And therefore, it's in the United States' interest to keep that war going as long as possible. But what I thought was really significant about what he said...
but his policy has been the direct opposite of that, in that he has always said, and I think he probably genuinely meant it, that he wanted to bring it to an end immediately he became president.
But then he met Putin in Alaska, and that didn't go well.
But he thinks it went fantastic.
Yes, I know. And that's exactly the sort of comment that Ella was talking about. But the worrying thing about what Trump said was that he put the onus on Europe to keep on financing it. He didn't talk, as Brandon rightly pointed out, he didn't say, and I'm going to make damn sure that they do win all those territories back because I'm going to supply them with the arms. No, he didn't say that. He said Europe is going to be the one that actually then supplies the armaments to Ukraine. So he wants Europe to be economically degraded by, and look, we need to pay
what he
more
wants
for
is for Europe to
defense.
buy the weapons from America to supply to Ukraine.
And so this is transactional. I don't think it's a realistic military assessment. I think it's what Trump believes is in the best interests of America and America arms and munitions suppliers.
OK, we will move on to a very important question that I'm really looking forward to hearing what Stella and Barry have to say on particularly. It's 8:46.
This is LBC.
Apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
We have with us in the studio Ella Whelan, Barry Gardiner, Brandon Lewis and Stella Tsantekidou. Now, Stella, what brings you from Greece to become a political advisor and then political commentator in this country?
The financial crisis, no, and reading too much English literature, that really got me. I used to read Jane Austen and Dickens,
wonderful.
and I used to feel, oh my God, British people, they are so poor and they are so sad. They really need me. I have to go and save them. And there we are now.
Have you been to Great Yarmouth to see Pegasus?
No, but I have to. I feel like I have to.
Definitely.
I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Charles Dickens and David Copperfield. Great Yarmouth.
It's a terrible admission.
I did not. I have to say, my English was not good enough for me to realize that David Copperfield was supposed to be. There was supposed to be a lot of humor and a lot of jokes in it. They all got over my head. I was just crying.
Have you been to the Cobb at Lyme for Jane Austen?
No. Oh, actually, is that in Bath?
No.
No, sorry. No.
Could I just remind you that you're listening to LBC, not Radio 4? Edward in Highgate says, Jeremy Corbyn's new party is going so well that he's had to issue an apology at the same time as asking people to join up to it. Is he finished as a force in politics now? Now, a little bit of background to this. Following a disagreement with his co-founder, Zara Sultana, about the governance of Your Party, which saw her claim that Corbyn and his allies are a sexist boys' club, and he has admitted today that his group haven't covered ourselves in glory, adding that he's sorry for the confusion. Barry,
I thought you might
have you ever flirted with joining Your Party?
No, and I wouldn't. Look, the question that you asked, though, is about, is Jeremy Corbyn finished as a force in British politics? This is a man who, 8 years ago, had people chanting at the festivals and singing his name. He had a very strong popular following. And the reason for that was because he's a man who stuck to his principles, and sometimes those principles were in favour, and sometimes they were out of favour. But he has stuck to them. And so he, if you like, he may be a seasonal politician. I respect him. I don't always agree with him, as you know.
But you stuck with him, didn't you?
Yes, as did Keir Starmer, yeah.
You've just found the one thing you and Keir Starmer have in common. Excellent.
I don't know how you can say that.
Well, because you and Keir Starmer have, shall we say, never been political allies, have you?
No, it's not true. We
I remember the Brexit days, and you and he had a big falling out.
We did, but that was over something that somebody taped in a private conversation in Brussels and then released. You're right. I said the tests were bollocks. I'm allowed to say that now because no, it's not after 9 o'clock. Sorry.
We do apologise. I usually just say grollocks because people know what you mean.
Yeah. But they were. I mean, for goodness sake, the idea that you can leave a club and still take all the same benefits with you was always for the birds.
Let's not rake over old ground too much. Ella.
Well, it's a joke, isn't it? But it's not really one that I'm laughing at because it's a shame that this is what the left has come to. There's been a number of, your party's probably one of the bigger ones, but there's been a number of things happening in the left. There was that one, it was also called Together something, run by some people around the RMT, and that came to nothing. I remember years ago when I was at university, there was one set up called Left Unity that was sort of backed by Ken Loach and others. That came to nothing. The reason they all come to nothing is because they're run by big egos. You can't find a bigger ego than Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, for all that you said about him and his principles, that's true. He's also got a humongous ego and a dedication to middle-class politics and middle-class people. I mean, the launch parties of these things are always in some working men's club populated by the petty bourgeoisie. I mean, it's disgusting. So I'm not surprised that this has happened, but it's a shame because actually, we've just spent, a big part of the programme talking about the right, however right you want to far right, soft right, whatever you want to describe them as, but there's a lot of conversation towards the right in politics at the moment. And there's not a lot going on the left. And maybe that's a sign of the times, but I think it's a shame because actually I'm a left-winger. There's lots that I want to talk about and there's no one to represent me in politics. And I'm sure lots of people feel the same way. Why would you want to get in behind Zara Sultan and Jeremy Corbyn, just messing about, really? This is a vanity project that was never going to go anywhere. And I hope it all burns up quickly so we stop talking about it.
Stella.
I think that Jeremy Corbyn is, if he wanted to, and if he had the energy in him, he's not finished and he would not be finished in British politics. Although at this stage, it's no longer within my interest to want that because he's no longer in the Labour Party, which I think is a big shame because I don't think that you should never have a leader of a party being kicked out under those circumstances.
He was anti-Semitic. We shouldn't let it pass without mentioning
I just think that
he would deny that he was anti-Semitic.
Sure,
you can accuse him of.
Let me just say the word. Yeah, okay, anti-Semitism. That mural. Everybody knows what I'm talking about.
I think he has apologized for that mural, so
okay.
I think that kicking him out was just disgraceful, and I'm really embarrassed by the fact that the Labour Party did that. And I think it's very bad for our healthy democratic dialogue within the party. Yep. However, having said that, I think that for most people it's gone completely over their heads, and this is why, Ian, you had to give the background to people, because most people who do not follow politics so closely and they don't have to comment on it on their day-to-day life will not be aware of the ins and outs of.
Well, there are 800,000 people registered on their website. I mean, that was quite an achievement.
Absolutely, and that is because there is of course a genuine hunger for people to go into politics that feel more radical, whether that's on the right or on the left. My wish for the Labour Party is that we find a way to become a broad umbrella party where we harness that kind of energy and where people like Jeremy Corbyn, with Jeremy Corbyn's politics, feel like, yes, the Labour Party is never going to be the vehicle for my exact project, because frankly there is no political party that is going to be the vehicle for Jeremy Corbyn's project. There is never going to be, in a representative democracy, there is never going to be that kind of thing. But they should be able to feel like I can go into that party and influence it on the policy areas that ring true to me. And some of these policy areas will be policy areas like Israel and Palestine, for example, where, frankly, Jeremy Corbyn has been closer to the views of the average British voter than
well, I think you say closer to
government.
Hamas.
No, absolutely.
Brandon.
Well,
briefly.
I had some dealings with Jeremy Corbyn when I was a minister doing national security, and I've always felt he scares me in the sense where I think he is a threat to UK national security if he ever got into a position of real power. I can't take this particularly seriously, and I would assume the happiest people about this situation today are the Labour Party leadership on the basis of an organisation with that kind of following.
Absolutely not. No, but the Green Party leadership.
Well, maybe, but an organisation with 800,000 people sign up online, if it could get organised, is a real problem for Keir Starmer. If it falls into this kind of disarray, it becomes a joke, and that's good news for Keir Starmer. So I can't take this. Jeremy Corbyn and Sultan, I just can't take seriously.
But what Stella said, I think, was absolutely right. We need a Labour Party that can hold at one end Jeremy Corbyn and at the other end Keir Starmer or Wes Streeting.
I'd be very concerned about any political party that has somebody with Jeremy Corbyn's views on certain issues of national security in its party.
Well, we had it for many, many years.
Yeah, and it was a problem.
And you weren't concerned about that when you were in a shadow cabinet?
No, I wasn't. No, I trusted Jeremy to do the right by Britain.
The party moderated him.
Yes.
The party completely moderated him, even on Russia and all of these issues that you are saying, and even on Palestine and Israel, and on anti-Semitism. The party completely moderated him.
Martin says, has Stella made any audiobooks? I love her voice.
Oh my God, no! And if I ever do have an audiobook, I will hire a person with crystal clear British accent.
Right. Sarah in Cheshire says, is Andy Burnham actually our next Prime Minister? You each have 30 seconds on this. Ella.
Who knows? It might be reading that New Statesman article. At least maybe the chat will be less boring. There's a long section of that dedicated to how personable he was, and I don't know if that's really that important, but he certainly made a bid for it.
He's done another interview with tomorrow's Telegraph. We're going to be talking about this after 9. He's on manoeuvres, isn't he, Barry?
Look, I don't know whether Andy's on manoeuvres. Certainly the New Statesman article put forward some clear policies about council tax reform, public ownership, levelling up. overhauling inheritance tax. These are things which the Labour Party should be considering. And I think what Andy's tried to do is to say, look, we don't have the vision being presented at the moment by the leadership of the party. We don't have that broad brush, what we were talking about earlier, and that's what we need. We need somebody who's going to go out there and present something that people in Britain look at and say, yeah, actually, I can get behind that. That would make a difference to me. And I think it's great that Andy's talking about it. I just wish the leadership would talk about it.
So it sounds to me as if Andy Burnham did come back to Parliament, you might support him if Keir Starmer fell under the proverbial bus.
I'm sure that...
Or if you pushed him under the bus.
I'm sure that Keir is not going to fall under any bus anytime soon.
Well, you have said some critical things about Keir Starmer over the last few days, haven't you?
Have I?
Well, I'm sure I saw... Well, one of your colleagues, Jo White, I think, she said she used the Michel Barnier phrase, the clock is ticking, and gave him till the May elections. And I'm pretty sure I read...
me.
No, but I'm pretty sure I read that you rather agreed with her.
No. In fact, I had vaguely heard those, but I hadn't commented on those
I saw you being listed in a newspaper article along with Stella Creasy.
Well, I'm sorry, you should never believe all you read.
Well, that'll teach me, won't it, Brandon?
No.
Not being involved in Labour circles, I have absolutely no idea if Andy is on manoeuvres, but I do think it says a lot about the state that a government a year and a half in is already talking about whether its current Prime Minister, who just won an unbelievable majority in modern times, may well be for the axe in favour of somebody else.
Remind us how many the Conservative Party had in the space of 5 years?
Not in our first year. And, David Cameron got elected in 2010, was there till he resigned in 2016. You're 18 months into a Labour government and already looking for a new leader.
Okay,
that's quite a special.
5.
Keir Starmer said he doesn't dream, and Andy Burnham went and said at the same interview for the same magazine that his favourite poet is Philip Larkin. That's the sensitive young man, so the online alt-right people on Twitter, the most favorite poet. So I don't know if that is not a power move and that's not him casting a broad net. I don't know what is.
Right, our fun question comes from Emmanuel in Lewisham. In my homeland of Malawi, our former president has just won a return to power at the age of 85. So which of this country's past leaders would you like to see put in power? Brandon.
On the basis that I've always believed that house building is fundamental to our country and we have not built enough homes in a very, very, very long time, I'd see Macmillan come back and get us back to building 100,000 homes a year, which we are a long way off, and the current government plans are never going to deliver it, and we need it for our economy and for young people to have a chance to get onto the housing ladder.
I always knew you were dripping wet. Stella.
Gordon Brown. I read Power Trip by Damon McBride and I can't get over him.
I published that.
Really?
Best book I ever published.
Honestly, such a good book. Yeah. One of the best political memoirs out there.
You can thank me later. Ella.
Boris Johnson. Just because you said Gordon Brown, what a dullard. And, I don't want to bring anyone back. I was thinking, should I say Blair, just to sort of exercise that whole New Labour thing again and show people how bad it was? No, let's just have a laugh.
Have you not got a political hero?
No, not anyone that was in Parliament, apart from Bernadette McAllister, who was the only female politician at the time of the Troubles who got up and punched someone across the house. Devlin as was, yeah. For insulting her and her political movement, but she wasn't a leader. I'd put her as Prime Minister.
Good God. Corey, make a note to disinvite Ella in future. Barry.
I'd go for the vision and communication skills of Nye Bevan with the detail and boringness of Clem Attlee, who put that vision into practice, created the National Health Service, created the welfare state. That's the sort of leader that we need now, a new vision for Britain going forward.
Thank you all very much indeed for coming on the show tonight. Monday's panel, live from the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, will have the Skills Minister, my old mucker, Baroness Jackie Smith, the General Secretary of the University and College Union, Joe Grady, and the Times columnist Sebastian Payne. In the next hour, we are going to return to the subject of Andy Burnham. He suggested that Sir Keir Starmer has no plan to turn the country around in an attack on the Prime Minister just before the Labour Party conference this weekend. Now, the Conservative Party it's very used to putative leaders doing this. I must admit I'm quite surprised at how far Andy Burnham has gone. He's not just given this interview to the New Statesman, the sort of in-house journal of the Labour Party. He's given one to the Daily Telegraph tomorrow, where he's saying some similar things. What's he up to? Would you welcome Andy Burnham trying to instigate some sort of leadership putsch in the Labour Party? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom.